Oh, happy sewing. Welcome, welcome everybody. Glad you're here. This is Easter weekend. And for some that means lots, for some that it doesn't hold fast to them. We just decided it was a good Saturday for us and we hadn't had a sew along in a while, and so we decided it's all taped. So if you're not here, you know you can watch it later, and if you are here, you get to ask questions. And so thanks for being here if you are here. I had an email. This really preceded the fact. I got an email and it said, you know, your sew-alongs are like hard. Would you just do a sew-along, like a 195 sweater set sew-along? And gosh, that's hard for me to do because I just feel like it's so simple. But I decided that this 321 is just kind of like the sweater set. It has everything the sweater set has, but it's just a little bit up there, a little bit more. So the 321 will kind of push you. You could do the 195, the sweater set, if you've done it, and you can simply jump to the 321. This is one of our new spring patterns. It's the Akris Faux Cowl T-top, and it's just going to be fun. So follow along, sew along. I did one Thursday night, and we'll show it's up over here. I'll show that to you later. We did it Thursday night, and it was just a variation. I did it as a dress, and I love it as a dress. I've done it a couple times as a dress. I've just done a long version of it. I just really, really like it. So we are trying out, you know, we're always working with sound. We're always trying to change and improve things, but it means I have to wear this mic, which you know I hate. But anyway, we'll do the best we can and see what happens. All right, so we're just going to start what we've done graphically. I'll just kind of generically tell you. That we have a 70-10 needle. I stitch at a 3.5 stitch length. The instructions we have, pages, not all the instructions, but we start with the sewing directions. We'll have up for you as we go along. We'll change them as I cue the guys to change that. And we have the fabric up, and I'm sewing on fabric 4225 is the fabric I'm sewing on. It's this beautiful, these florals are so popular right now for spring. They're just everywhere, and I got in a whole group of them, and I'm thrilled to have them. But this kind of like a blue background, but we've got very similar with a charcoal background. They're really pretty. The top I have on is the 621. It's the new Fit to Stitch pattern. And that is, the fabric on that is 4227. Okay? All right, so with that, let's get started. We've got a camera on the sewing machine, and we've got a camera on the serger, so we are just uptown here. Okay, so we're going to start, and we'll put up page 1 of the directions. That's where we'll start. And page 1 of the directions is pretty easy. I didn't make any changes to this. I always love when I say this, except it seems like I don't know why I say it that way. I made one change to this pattern and I lengthened it. That's all. If you notice in some of the ones we had online when we did the little video of the new spring patterns, the top was shorter, and because crop tops are so popular. So obviously I didn't want to put a crop top out because crop tops you just cut off. Longer tops are a little harder to do pattern-wise because I have to bridge several areas. But this one was a little shorter, and I decided I wanted it a little bit longer, so I went ahead and added some inches to the bottom. Completely up to you, but everything else on the pattern I've left exactly where it is. For those of you watching, feel free to ask questions. Do not, you know, this is why we do it live. It's for you to ask questions. I'm doing the darts right now, so this is, we're on page 1, and you can see the first thing you do is those lovely little French darts. And so just line it up. I always start at the tip because I feel like when I start at the tip, I get a more gradual dart. And you go right to that little section right there. And a lot of times when you're at the tip, like in this case, sometimes my thread kind of knotted itself, so I don't even have to worry about tying a knot. That one's good. So that's 1, you've got 2, and I'm going to do the other one. When you're cutting out, there's one little secret I'm going to tell you to do on this particular pattern. So if you're on the sweater set, I'm going to kind of make an analogy because there really was this big push for the sweater set. These darts would be the same. They wouldn't be any different. And I think in those directions you even start stitching those 2 darts. And so here, I always take 1 stitch off the fabric and then come onto the fabric, because in many cases your thread itself will tie a knot. It will knot itself. I would not backstitch here. It's too much thread and too little space, and a lot of times your machine will just kind of, it's just not happy. It just kind of jams up a little bit. All right, so there's the front, and you can see I've got those 2 little darts there. Okay, then you notice the bottom of this column, you see the back, and with the back what it's doing is just serging the back neck edge. But one thing, a little tip I want to give you when you're cutting this out, this has a lowered shoulder. It's actually called a forward shoulder. So the shoulder itself is, the seam is not at the shoulder seam, it's actually part of the front, the bodice front. So basically in cutting the pattern, I cut off the front and I added it to the back. So that means when you look at the pattern piece for the back, you're going to see a shoulder line. It's literally on the pattern, it says shoulder line. So what I did when I was cutting this out is on the armhole, I put a little clip right there, because that's where, when I'm setting that sleeve in, I want the top of the sleeve to go here, not where the seam is. And so that's just a reminder for me of where I want it to go. And all I'm going to do with this particular back right now is I'm just going to serge that back edge. I'm going to serge the back neck edge. And this is in preparation to where I do the shoulder seams a little bit later. All right, easy peasy. I've got all kinds of emails about sergers and what I like, and I don't know. I don't think there's a better serger on the market than this little baby lock. But everybody's kind of got their own thing and why they like what they like, and et cetera, et cetera. Is the front and back based on the sweater set except for the neckline? It is. I think so. I mean, you know, there's sometimes I make changes and then I forgot I made those changes and then you guys nail me to the wall. But I'm pretty sure all I did, I might have broadened it a little bit. In fact, I think I did, now that I sit here and think about it. I think I opened up the neckline just a little bit, because that cowl, I wanted it to be a little lower. And if I hadn't have lowered, I did lower it. So no, it's not. Sorry. To amend that answer, it's lower. Okay? But it's the same, like the shoulder angle's the same, the darts are the same. Okay, then we're going to go to the second column. And in the second column, what you see is you take piece number 3. Piece number 3, this is my sleeve, I'm going to put that over here. Piece number 3 is the wider of the 2. You've got 2 of these little curved pieces. Piece number 3 is the wider of the 2. And I'm going to turn my machine to baste. The longest machine baste. Don't hand baste. It just means turn it into a machine baste. And I'm going right on the edges. I don't want to go on the seam allowance. I want to go within the seam allowance, a little less than the seam allowance. But pretty close to the seam allowance, just a little bit less than. And I'm going to do that on both ends of number 3. Okay, easy enough. Clip that. All right, then make sure you take your machine off base, because that's the only basting you're doing, and if you don't take it off, you'll have to restitch some parts. So when I baste, I have a tendency to tie off one end. That way when I pull the other end, my gathers are really, I can really make them even. And to me, it gives a much better gathered edge is when one edge is stable, one end is stable, and the other end is the end that you get to pull in. So you're not pulling in both ends or losing the gathers off one end. I think it's a little easier way to do it. All right, so I'm going to tie off one of these ends on both sides and then cut these strings, and I'll be good to go. And I'll go on to the next step. And you know, a lot of us, you know, we have different ways of doing this. This is not anything critical. It's just kind of what I do. Okay. So it has the same neckline as Sunny's top. You guys, I don't think so. I think it has its own unique neckline. You know, I just literally made up a new neckline, and so we'd have another neckline in our repertoire of necklines. How do I adjust the shoulder for this pattern, for a sloped shoulder? You probably won't need to adjust, because when you are assuming that the shoulder is sloped, you have to get a shoulder seam in a certain place, and you don't have to. So you have a wider variance of, you know, you don't have to be exact, basically, is what it does, and it's nice. The only thing you might do is, you know, when I just talked about where I cut that notch, cut the notch where your shoulder seam is, and then line your sleeve up to your notch as opposed to the one on the pattern. And that will, it's not really the shoulder that you need to worry about when you have a forward shoulder. It's actually the sleeve and how the sleeve pairs into the body. Because if your shoulder is more forward, then your sleeve is more backwards. So that's really all you have to do. Did you trim when you serged? No. No, I just serge at 3. Yeah, I take that back. It does. You know, these little details, you guys, I don't pay attention, but sorry. Yes, it trimmed automatically for me. Okay, so I've got my basting in, and the next step is we're on that same column, and all I'm going to do is sew piece number 2 to piece number 3. And I think we have this wrong in the directions. We have the photo right, everything's right, the description's right, everything's right, except that what's wrong is it calls piece number 3 piece number 2. So you notice in the very top of the directions it says stitch cowl gather 2 to cowl base 2. It's cowl gather 3 to cowl base 2. It's numbered right, it's said right, it's just that one number is not correct. So, and actually it does say to stitch them together. What I'm going to do, and this will also help you secure your gathers, which is why we did it in the way we did it, is I'm actually going to serge this. And the reason I'm going to serge it is you're going to find that when you go to flip this to the inside, is that serging, that the wider stitch on there, it'll give the neckline actually more stability. And I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to serge these two together. If you don't have a serger, just stitch it. It's not a big deal. But I am going to serge these together. And again, what you can see is I'm actually going through the end, and that's actually where that serger thread is. I mean, where the gathering thread was, where I tied it off. So it's kind of doubly secured now. And that's exactly what you're going to get, and that's what the picture shows. Okay, that's pretty. And the underneath part is gathered, but the top part is not. Okay, then I'm going to go down to the bottom of that page, and all I'm going to do is lay these flat, and I'm going to top stitch on piece number 2. And what that's doing is it's a little understitch is what it is. So just kind of make sure the seam is on this side. You can see the seam is actually what I'm stitching on. I'm using, I think you can see on camera, yeah. See this little finger right here? That's what I'm using. I'm letting my seam go along there. So the easiest way to get straight sewing is to just pick a spot on your foot. And my Teflon foot has a lot of little fingers on it, and that's one reason I like my foot. There's several reasons, but that's definitely one reason. Okay, so I'm stitching on piece number 2. I'm top stitching on piece number 2 and to that serge seam underneath, or non-serge seam, whichever, it doesn't make a difference. And so let me put that in the camera. You can see that's what you've got now. Isn't that pretty? Okay. So now we're going to go to the next column. And what I'm saying here is when you go to pick this up, this wider stitched seam has a tendency to just lay under there really nicely. It just has greater body, so it really holds that little section very nicely. Okay, so the next column now, what we're going to do, and it doesn't matter which way you put up first, is we're going to gather up the gathering thread. And so I always use my bobbin thread. I think it's a little easier. And you've got that one end secured. I'm going to do this in front of the camera so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. You got one end secured, so you're just going to pull that up, and you're going to pull it up to where it's equal to the width of piece number 2. And you want to keep all those gathers nice and straight. I don't tie it off because I think that you can, I think it's easy enough to do it. But however, again, however you gather doesn't make a difference. And you can see those two pieces are even now. So that's enough for that side. I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to do the other side. And again, just gather this up. Let me put it under the camera again so you can kind of see. Going up, up. The bobbin thread will have a tendency to pull up a little bit easier, just FYI. If you can't remember which one's your bobbin thread, it's not a big deal. And then just check to make sure you've gathered up about the same. It doesn't even have to be exact. We're going to kind of pin it on this side. And then I'm going to turn it to the right side, and we'll go to the next picture on that same column. We're still on the same column. And I think what I love about this top, you guys, and really one reason I did it was because it was just so cute. I'm going to work under the camera here so you can see. I'm going to put the edges of 2 and 3 together. I know you have it in your guide sheet, but I'm going to put those two edges together, and I'm going to pin. I'm not even going to worry about anything else right now. I'm just going to pin these two layers together. And so you can kind of see that I'm manipulating this around, and I'm just going to pin that edge. Can they see that? Oh, sorry. Move it down. Reclip it. Okay, better? Okay, we got new things with this mic stuff, guys. Okay, so that way I'm not tucking into my hair, huh? So again, I'm going to start with this end and just make them even. So sometimes when you're going to do this, you will find that there's a little extra fabric. So sometimes that fabric just pulls, it just becomes extra, just gingerly. I'm not going to say ease because it's really not easing, but just make sure the edges are the same and make sure you've got that done together at one time. You can, if you want, depending on your skill level and your confidence level, you can just baste these together if you want. You're going to sew them now to the front. You're going to sew them to piece number 1. For me, pinning works really well, and pinning is enough. So once I pin them, I just sew them. So see how I've got a little bit of extra fabric here? I'm just going to work it out until it's all even. And it will even itself out. It just means that as you've done the layers, you've kind of pulled one layer a little more than another. So just be patient in that process until you get them straight. And put in enough pins until you feel like it'll hold it where you want to hold it. All right, so I've got it close. I'm going to go one more time back the other way just to make sure those edges are even. And they should lay flat with no problem. Don't assume that there's something wrong with the pattern. There's nothing wrong with the pattern. It's the knits, it's the way they're cut, it's, you know, the pattern is accurate. Just be patient with this process. It's just that when one has a greater curve to it, with a knit, it has a tendency to pull and to create extra length. So just work that in. Don't ease it in. Don't run a stitch through it. Don't do any of that. Just be patient. So that's one reason I wanted to do this one, is so that you could kind of see that this is right and how it works in. All right, so you can kind of see I've taken it all the way up here and I've gotten it in now. So I'm not going to, again, run this stitch. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this right to the front. But if you do decide to take a stitch, just turn your machine back to baste. I wouldn't put a regular length stitch through here because I think it's too, I don't know, I think it's just too much stitching. Guess it doesn't really matter, but I would run a basting stitch. So we're going to be at the bottom. That looks great. I'm going to be at the bottom of the front now. And you can see the bottom of that column is this little U part. I'm going to stitch this to this, just like that. So I'm going to put right sides together. I've got them pinned. Don't worry about the gathers right now. And I guess if you wanted to, you could, I guess you should pin this. I was going to say, I've done the blouse numerous times, but I guess because I'm sewing for you guys, I really should. Let's do it right. I mean, let's make sure. Let's do it how I encourage you to do it. So on the pattern, you have notches, but instead of doing notches, you can just simply mark the middle of the piece, mark the middle of the neck edge, and then you know those pieces will line up. And then I'm going to go to the serger. I think that's close enough. It's literally a 1-to-1 when you go to sew it. Does everybody know where I'm at? Any questions on where I'm at? Are you guys okay? Are you ahead of me? Am I being too slow? Okay, so I'm going to serge this. And again, you don't have to serge it. These are all knits, and they'll lay flat without any problem. Are you using a Teflon foot? I am using a Teflon foot. Oh, why are you using a Teflon foot? Thank you. I always use a Teflon foot because so you on a sewing machine, when you sew, you've got your feed dogs on the bottom, and Faux came out years ago with what they called the top feed or whatever it was, and they patented and nobody else could use it. The fact of the matter is you just want something on the top that doesn't deter the layers from going through evenly. You should have your hand in the back and a hand in the front, and you should be controlling that. But the Teflon foot just makes the top layer glide easier, and it doesn't give it any kind of drag resistance, so that when that bottom foot is pulling, the top foot is not working against you. It's kind of working with you. So I leave the Teflon foot on for everything, and I love it. Okay. When I started this serge, sorry, it's separating the layers. So I want to make sure that this is all in together. You probably can't understand that. When I started serging the foot, exactly kind of what we're talking about. There's no Teflon foot on this. It kind of just hangs on to those top layers. So I had to just back it up to make sure that the layers were straight in there. So it's not that long of sewing, and I pin these two, and I can see that this is going to work in fine. So I don't pin any additionally. But again, how much you pin, I do think as sewers, we spend a lot of time overdoing. Kind of, we're too nervous. I don't want it to turn out wrong, so I understand why you pin. But let's try to minimize it if we can. And I've got a lot of pins in here, and I don't want to run over any pins. So this is my middle mark. That's where I had pinned it, and it's exactly right on. So I'm going to keep going. And then I'll show you. We're kind of finished with the neckline. It's really pretty. And what I'm doing is I'm serging 2 and 3 together to 1. And the 2 and 3 together, because they're not the same width, one is gathered into another, it's creating that beautiful neckline. That faux cowl, we're calling it. I'm going to pin this end here to make sure I'm coming up at the right place. I've gotten a lot of questions about this gathered neck edge on this particular top. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this top also is I wanted you to see that this gathered neckline, it just happens all on its own in the way the pattern is. You don't really have to force it to happen. It's just going to happen. And so you'll see that here as we're sewing this. Okay. What serger do you recommend for beginners? You know, I think sergers are all about price points, personally. I think you buy as much serger as you can afford. And having said that, if you're a beginner, because if you're a beginner, to me, you're putting a lot of money into equipment. I did not buy the most expensive serger I could afford. I bought the most expensive serger that I needed. I don't need a lot of bells and whistles. I don't need all that. I needed good lighting, and I needed something that was accurate and consistent. And so I bought the Victory. There's much more expensive, but I guess the reason I'm saying that to you is if you don't know how to thread, for instance, on a serger, and if you're going to spend a lot of time, you know, doing on that, and it's a good thing, it's not bad, it just can be really frustrating. It can thwart your sewing endeavors because you're working with your tool as opposed to working and progressing forward. And I hate to see that. I remember the first serger I ever, actually it was given to me, and I just hated it. I mean, I hated it. I hated it so bad. I got another one, and then I still feel bad to this day. I gave that serger to my mother. My mother had never had a serger, and she was thrilled and delighted, but I still feel guilty because I feel like I just gave her all my problems. But she learned how to use it, and she actually went to classes, and you know, that's kind of stuff you need to do. So I think if you're really not familiar with a serger, the best person I know on a serger is Kathy Reddy. That woman is a unbelievable wizard on a serger. And the thing that she always said to me was that it's because she understood them. And I think that's really true. Once you understand them, I don't know about that. I understand them and they're still complicated. But anyway, should we be on the next pattern page? No, not yet. Not quite. I'm just serging that. Oh, that was you? Yeah, we're on number 3. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you guys. Thank you all. You guys will keep us in line here. How much did you lengthen the top? I lengthened the top 4 inches. Just the front and just the back, that's all. And actually I shortened the sleeve. I decided I wanted a 3/4 sleeve. It was all styling. So I took the sleeve and did a 3/4 sleeve. Okay. Can that foot be used on a Brother machine? I do not think this is a Viking foot, and I do not think that Viking and Brother's feet are interchangeable. I do not think so. I would be surprised if they are. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are. Okay, so here is what we've created. It's so pretty. And then what I did is I put pins along the shoulder edge that bring in the gathers. I kind of fine-tune the gathers. Still don't worry about the gathers. We're going to do these gathers here in a minute, but don't worry about them right now. And I think I am going to, no, I'm not even going to press it. I'm going to let you just not press it for a little bit. Okay, let's leave it. I am going to cut these threads because they get in my way and they drive me crazy. All right, so the next column that we're going to do here now is column number 4. If you'll change that for me, please, Benjamin. Okay, again, don't worry about changing anything right now. You've just got the front and you've got the neckline piece sewn there. You can see in the back it's all curvy and wavy, but don't worry about anything. Don't fix anything just yet. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is sew the back on. And just lay them on top. And the back, the seam you want to go down, so that means out toward the sleeve. And the seam is also going to go past, the shoulder seam of the back is going to be wider than the shoulder seams of the front. Okay, so and it's by a seam allowance. It's by 3/8 inch because it's going to wrap around here in a minute. It's going to wrap around that edge. And I'm going to do that on the serger. So I'm going to put that down. So generally, if I have all these gathers and I have all these things that are having to go in the direction they have to go in, I put those down so that they easily will go in that direction. So the gathers will easily happen without, I don't need to be looking at them. I don't need to be watching them. They'll do it on their own. All right, so you can see there's my seam. It's a little bit farther out than the rest. I've done all the gathers. When you look at that seam, that's what you get. This seam that I sewed the neck edge is out or down, and you can see that my back is a little bit beyond. It's going to tuck under. We're going to hem that here in just a minute. But for now, that's what I want. Then I'm just going to repeat it for the other side. Okay, any questions for there? We're good? Okay, I'm going to just do it again. Okay, I think you mentioned in a prior webcast that a woven fabric can be used for part of this top. What pieces of this top can be done with a woven fabric? So I love that question because time permitted me from doing it, but you could do the whole thing in woven. And then just change out the sleeve and the armhole. Go to a larger size so that you have your ease. But as far as the neckline is big enough, you can get it on and off your head. So there's two things you have to remember when you're going from knits to woven and wovens to knits. Is number one is ease. How am I going to get it off and on? And mobility. So ease and how am I going to get it off and on is done by going to a larger size. And then movement, mobility. If you just take and put in a blouse sleeve and a blouse armhole, you're good to go. Okay. Who was the serger person you mentioned? Does she have video tips on serging? Kathy Reddy. I can't imagine that she did. Kathy, Kathy Reddy, Ruddy. She has a zillion things on serging. And I'm going to tell you something. She taught serger classes in a lot of expos that I put on, and she was amazing. I mean, I never had time to actually sit down and go to her serger class, but I always threatened her I would. But anyway, she's terrific. Do you sew the pinned edge? You sew the pinned edge to the neckline? Yes. Yes, I did that. If I wanted to raise the neckline to make it higher, how would I do that? I don't know that tell me why you want to do that. Because it's already high and you're getting it so small you're not going to be able to get it over your head. So that answer is not an easy answer. If you tell me why you want to do that, then we'll go from there. Okay, and I'm going to do this other shoulder seam, and again I'm going to put all the gathers down. I sew with the back up, and that's really just to it's easier. It's to keep everything in place. And just make sure you don't sew over those pins, because sergers and pins do not get along. Okay. All right, the next step. Well, here, we'll show this. What we've got is we've got actual blouse now. It's looking like a blouse. But you can see I've got to hem that back neck edge. And so the next step is the way I'm going to do that. And you're going to fold. Can we come in and go close on this? How close can we get? You're going to come in and fold that in, and you're going to fold that over. And it'll be 3/8 of an inch. And then you're just going to top stitch, just like you would on the sweater set, except the front's already done. So we're going to put that on the machine, and I'll fold it on the machine so you can kind of see it as I'm doing it. All right, so here's my additional part that's left over. I'm going to fold it there. I'm going to fold it over, and I'm going to start to stitch. Now when I start to stitch, and this is just on piece number 4, I'm going to do a little back stitch here. because there's nothing that's going to overstitch it. There's nothing that's going to come back. And then you're literally just going to turn under your 3/8 and go all the way to the other edge. You've got a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and you're just coming all the way back. Coming all the way around to the other side. So kind of ahead of time, I know I'm right there ready to sew it, but here's the little section where I turned under again, and then backstitch that area. So I'm going to turn it over to the other side so you can kind of see what it looks like close up. Just hang on for a second. Okay, there you go. So see, you don't have any stitching on the front. Any stitching that you did is on the inside. It's a top stitching. So that top stitching just literally comes right to the shoulder seam, and then you're going to back stitch. This is a really fun little way to finish off a neck edge. And because you've back stitched, I can just clip the seams. And I'm still not going to iron it, you guys. I'm really going to push this ironing because, you know, ironing takes so much time. It's kind of a joke. I'm just kidding. But there's no reason to get up and down, and there's no reason that neck edge has to be pressed. It's done, and I've got to press the sleeve, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Isn't that pretty? It's looking really good. Again, don't worry about those gathers on the neck. I'm going to show you how to do those, but we're going to do them with the iron. I haven't pressed the darts. I haven't pressed anything. Okay, so now we're going to put in the sleeve. And remember, we've got a little indentation where I put that sleeve, and I'm going to fold this sleeve in half, and then I'm going to put a pin at the top. Then we'll take some time to answer some questions before we put the sleeves in. I have trouble to find a good fabric store in Massachusetts. Recommendations, please. Silhouettepatterns.com. Okay. Massachusetts has a place. Apple Annie is still on, I think. Apple Annie Fabrics. You can check her out. She's in Swansea, I think, Mass. And there's a fabric place, but I don't know how good their quality of fabrics is. Apple Annie, I know is good quality because I kind of know some of the people she's buying from. But check out silhouettepatterns.com. We have amazing prices. You won't find better fabric cheaper because we're basically giving it to you as what we're paying for it. We just figure we're not a fabric store. We just figure we're like a pattern company, so that likes to sell fabrics. Whenever I do my sleeves, I always finish off the bottom first because they're flat and it's a little easier to do that. So that's all I'm doing right now. I put pins in the top, I've marked halfway, and I'm just serging the bottom. You guys are cold up there in Massachusetts. I saw your weather the other day. It's freezing. Okay, in the drawing it looked like the bottom edge of piece number 2 was longer than piece number 3. The bottom edge of piece number 2, it's not. It's not, it's just our drawings. The bottom, if you take the pattern pieces and align them, you'll see they're the same. How would you lower the neckline? I have very sensitive skin on my chest that is bothered by fabric rubbing on it. And the reason I say this is the whole reason I made the pattern, is lowering these pieces, and you know, is pattern making. It's just, in this particular case, it's complex. So because of the gathering on top, but what I'm saying to you is I would make a sample first because it is lower. I mean, it's lower. I don't know how much lower you could make it without getting into the bust point. And so I don't know how to answer that question. Okay? Sorry, that's not a very good answer, but I don't really, it's more than just taking a French curve and making it lower, which typically is what you're doing. But this has got a lot of pieces involved, and these pieces and getting them ratios to be correct was not easy. Okay? Yeah. Just try it, you guys. Yeah, you got it. Don't look at the picture and see where it is on our model. Just make it up. And, you know, you can email me privately and I'll go through and help you. But make it up first. I won't help you until you make it up, because you're making up situations that aren't necessarily going to happen. And it's going to be some work on your part and on my part to tell you how to do it. I thought about it, which is why I made it it's a beautiful neckline. I mean, it's not high, it's not low, it's kind of, you know, just right. The 3 little bears. All right, so let's put in the sleeve. I've got the sleeve side down. We're going to serge those in. And we're at the bottom of that the fourth column. I'm sorry. We're still on that same column. We're just at the very bottom. Do you have any suggestions on improving our sewing skills in general? Yeah, sew. It happened to me. My ex will tell you, he told my children that I was a lousy seamstress. You know what? I'm not a lousy seamstress. I was a lousy seamstress, but I sewed a whole bunch. I divorced him and sewed, and that's the key. You don't have to divorce, but sew. Just sew a lot. And I think a lot of people don't progress because they're so persnickety about how good their stuff is that they won't sew. If you just sew a whole bunch, it's like anything. Tennis, yoga, anything. You'll become good at it. You'll become better. How's that? All right, so the seam, the shoulder seam that I sewed, or it's not really at the shoulder, but you know what I'm talking about. That seam goes to the back, and my little clip and my pin are just, they're such a happy alignment. I'm so happy. I took that out and then just line up the rest. Keep going. Don't try to pin these two together. Literally do it just how we have it in the directions. And honestly, it's so easy. So many women have done this over the years. So if you're doing any of our knits, all of our knits use the same sleeve, same armhole, and it's magic. I shouldn't say it's magic, but it's good and it's easy and it's simple, because then you'll think it's magic. It's not magic. It's just, my mother used to always say, it's because I held my mouth just right. So maybe that's what it is. I held my mouth just right. But see, there you go. It's adorable. Okay, and then I'm going to do the other side and put that sleeve in, and then I'm going to press, because you don't want to do that side seam until you've pressed the armhole, until you've pressed the sleeve. So I'm going to put these two together where they go and do the other one. Do we have any questions? Are we okay? Okay. Saturday afternoon, just zipping along, making a little Easter top. That's my goal, a new little Easter top. So when you're sewing one side of this, you can't help it, but you're going to have the seam, the shoulder seam is going to be facing up. And whenever you're doing that, you've got to kind of make it a point to make sure you hold it down to where it goes to the back. Typically, if I'm serging, I'm always going to put my seams facing down so that it's easier for them to go in the direction they're supposed to go. All right, so we've sewed that seam and we're going to the iron. And we're going to press everything we've done to this point. And then we're going to sew up the side seams. And we're going to be on that very last column is where we'll come back to. Okay, but let's answer these questions. Didn't you learn a lot from your tips from the industry? I think I've learned a lot from a lot of different avenues, to be honest. I don't know that I could tell you where I learned the most from. I think it's just been a little bit, but I share all of those with you. They're in our patterns, they're in our videos, they're everywhere. So I think they're fairly easy. I don't think sewing is hard. Whoops, I got to step on my pack. I don't think sewing is hard as much as I think it's simply practicing. And I think a lot of us are perfectionists, and we want, or not perfectionists, but you know, we just want it perfect, and we're not good at just saying that's good enough. Let's move forward. And I say that because I'm that way with other things. You know, there's things I'm learning to do right now that I don't like, that I'm not very good at. But I think that's the way it goes. Okay, so I'm pressed that seam open. I'm going to turn it and I pull it over the end of my board. And then it just makes a really beautiful sleeve, the top. And I'm going to do it to the other one. Are there any, oh, sorry. Then I'm going to do it to the other side. This fabric that I'm using is a cotton. It's got a little bit of poly in it, but boy, it presses really, really nicely. It sews really nicely. I mean, you guys, all these florals are like $10.99. They're truly like giveaway price. They're so beautiful. Okay, so then I'm going to come on the inside. This is piece number 1. My sleeves are good. I'm going to press these French darts. I'm going to press those down. So even if you're doing 195, this is the same thing. I always press them from the inside, and then I'll take them to the right side. Just kind of give them a good press. Especially if you take them over the end of your board. You can kind of pull them to where they're flat, and then just give a really good press. All right, then I'm going to come to that neck edge that I sewed, and I told you all to press that toward the hem, so I'm going to press that now also. I didn't really have to worry about pressing these when I was doing them, because one was not contingent on the other. So press it from the wrong side, turn it over, and then get up in there and press it from the right side. And also I can press the back hem and maybe the back neckline. Because that's already been done now. And again, one was not, the only time I'll stop and press, because pressing, it's not the pressing that takes time. I think the stopping and shifting back and forth takes a lot of time. So anytime, if it's not contingent on the next one, I'll just leave it until I get to the iron. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to press this gather portion. That's what I want to get into. Can they see that okay? Okay, so you can see that for right now, it's just kind of a wadded mess. And you're going to give it a little bit of direction. It says this in the directions too, but the first thing I'm going to do is press that neck edge. And when that neck edge, remember that's been understitched, so it has a little body to it. You're just going to pull and let these lay down however you like them, kind of pretty. And then just give them a little bit of steam. You could put it on a hanger if you wanted to, however you want it to give it direction. And then just give it some steam so that it will go the direction you want and lay down really pretty. Make sure the seam underneath is going down. Mine flipped up a little bit. So go in there with your hand and make sure it's going down. You could, the seam down here, you could top stitch it. I've made several and I found it not necessary to do that. Okay, and see the difference there and how it's hanging now? That neckline is just really pretty. It's such a pretty neckline. I saw this and I just really, really liked it. And it can be done with contrasting fabrics. I haven't done that yet, but I'm sure I'll make more. Just press that in place. Okay, very pretty. We'll put it on a mannequin here in a little bit. Let's finish up the side seams. When will the Elise pattern ship? Probably mid-April, which is, I guess it's not next week, but it's getting pretty close. So it'll ship. It's cooking in the oven. It's ready. It's just cooking a little bit. So, and when I say that, sometimes it's a little bit out of our control. We say mid-April. We hope it'll be earlier, but we'll say mid-April. And for those of you who have bought that, 100% of those proceeds go to Fit to Stitch, 100%. So thank you. right, so you just start at the sleeve, or I start at the sleeve. And again, this would be the exact same if you're doing the sweater set, ladies. Line up your underarm seam. The underarm seam is stitched toward the hem, so it's kind of easy. That's why I start with the sleeve hem, because that way the hem is toward you. Kind of look ahead, line your bottoms up here, and then just make sure your edges are in, make sure your French dart's down. And that was pretty simple. Now, because I've got this open, I'm going to serge the hem before I close up that last seam. There's nothing like a wonderful serger. It just sings as it goes along. Any questions, you guys? So all we're going to do is do this last seam, and then I'm going to show you just a brief little hem that you can do. I get plenty of questions about hem, and I think it's just from, I don't know. Let's not make it hard. But maybe if you see me doing it, I think you might be able to kind of simplify it in your brain. So we're going to keep it simple. Keep your edges together and keep the French dart down. And we have a top. And so one of my most fun things to do, like when I'm finished, is I turn off my serger. That's like my sign to myself that, hey man, I'm almost there. Okay, I do want to do a hem. Here, I'll turn it to the outside so y'all can see it. Now again, this one, I decided I wanted to wear it with a little pair of jeans, so I lengthened it, and then I did a 3/4 sleeve. I love the bluish color jeans. That's so cute, and it's so soft. Okay, let's hem the bottom. And so that we can kind of take a look at it. My French dart is here. So this seam goes to the back. I'm going to turn up, and I'll use, typically, on the bottom of a hem, I'll do about 1 inch. So I'm going to turn that up, and I have done this a lot. So if you haven't, you could iron this. You could press up the bottom first so that you have that fold ready to go. I use 2 things that I guide by. Notice on right here, on the edge, I'm using that is where my fabric fold is going to be. And over here on this edge is where my, you know, I use that point a lot, that little finger in there, and then just go. So what I'll do is I'll do a little section. So I'll line up the fold over to here. I'll line up my little finger right in there, then just do that little section. Don't pull, get a flat surface. If you need a table, we've got tables. We sell those tables. I do think that helps tremendously because I think it's hard to line something up straight if you don't have something straight to put it all on. And then I'm going to show you this other side just so you can see the way it looks on the other side. There you can see that. Okay. When you're going through multicolors, like a floral like this, I typically will pick my darker color. The darker looks better on a light than the lighter looks on the dark. My background color. So I used kind of a grayish blue thread for this. And I just did a couple samples and I liked it. Just really liked the color. because I'm going all the way around the bottom. I'm going to overstitch where I started, so I don't backstitch. I've overstitched. I clip those threads, and I'm good. And I clip the ones that I started with. Okay. Okay. So then we finish up with doing the sleeves. We don't need to do that because you guys can do your own sewing now. Doesn't make any difference on the sleeve. You can turn up 1 inch, but I typically will only turn up 3/8. Simply because, you know, it's shorter, it's the sleeve, so I don't think it makes as much difference. So let's take just a minute. I'll finish up while you guys are answering questions. The goal, literally the goal here is to give you the confidence and says, hey, I can do this. You literally saw me just make the shirt. And I know for myself, when I watch others, I'm like, hey, I can do that. So that's the goal. You can do this. Next week, we'll have a sew along at your house. And you'll sew and I'll watch. How's that? All right. Let's answer the questions. Do you ever use a cover stitch machine for hemming? I don't. Probably because I'm lazy, to be honest. I have one. It's sitting right here. But I don't. I guess I just, I don't know. I guess I'm lazy. I guess that's the only answer I can come up with. It's time. It's not lazy. It takes a lot of time to change. Mine does. I don't know. They might have cover stitch machines that, you know, are faster now. I haven't looked for those because I do a lot of knits and I like the way they look without doing the cover stitch. So I think it's all a matter of if you like how they look and, you know, if you're happy with the final product. Okay. Do you use straight stitches? Yes. You want to use a straight stitch. That's a 3.5. If you use a smaller stitch, it will pop because it's too small. You can't, it's too close, it's too tight. It won't allow the fabric to give. So when you've got a longer stitch, so you can see that can still give without popping the stitches. So if you're popping your stitches on your hems, it's because you're using too small of stitch length, and that's the issue. Okay. Yeah, happy Easter to you too. I want to show you a couple garments over here. Let's just show you. I want to tell you about. I answered that. Yeah. Brett, if you don't mind, let's show them these pictures here. I'm going to just press the hems on this and press the side seams. Side seams get pressed to the back, just FYI. And then this I wanted to show you. This was the original. Or one of the originals. We had several originals, to be honest. But I did do it with a solid. If you look at the front of the cover, it's done with a solid. I love that solid because it really shows off if you're using a solid fabric, it really shows off the beauty of the cowl. You see the cowl a lot better than you do with a print. I like the print because it's kind of like a very subtle nod to the print itself. So I like both ways, and I wanted to show you both ways. This is 201 is the covering. I don't have the fabric anymore. This fabric's gone. You guys, some of you have it, but I don't have it. And then this fabric right here was the Thursday night. That's 4232 is that particular fabric. I was going to put this on a mannequin. This is actually finished, completely ready to wear. Isn't that fun? If you want to put a label in, I love labels, but you know, I think for me, labels are just fast to know which way to put it on, front or back. What's that? Page 5? Yeah, page 5, you guys. Page 5 is just doing the side seam. Benjamin, would you hand me that white mannequin, if you don't mind? Not the coat, just the white mannequin. Yeah, thanks. I want to put it on a mannequin just so y'all can see kind of the concept of what it looks like. And I forgot to have one ready. Thank you. Okay, so let's put it on our little girl. Oh, I love it. Is that just so adorable? Okay, so notice the shoulder seam is down a little bit. This goes in between. Like I said, do not worry about it being exact because it's not exact. It's just fun to let it sit. So you can see the top of my sleeve is here, not there. Don't make that mistake. You've got your French darts. It looks amazing. Ah, can you imagine a pair of jeans, 3/4 sleeve, pushed up? Just cute. Okay. How fast did we make it in? About an hour? I'm really curious now. What do you use the cover stitch machine for? Cover stitch machine is just if you're doing like a hem. So that cover stitch machine, it literally shows. It hems and does a little, just look on any knit that you buy from this, not any knit. I guess it's, see, I think that's my problem too. A lot of knits now are not being done with cover stitch. And so I don't, it just doesn't matter to me one way or another. If it is a look that is critical for you and you really want it, go after it and you'll see it. You'll notice it. It's just it's a hem that shows on the outside of knits. Okay. You used a straight stitch for the hem. I used a straight stitch, yes. 3.5, 70-10 needle. And you can see, because it still stretches, it has plenty of stretch to it. The reason your stitches are popping is because you're using too small of a stitch and the fabric can't go. When the stitch is longer, the fabric can move a little bit. Okay. Do you have a pattern for the ruched hip and sleeve on the white floral dress? Well, that was a 312, and I went through and did the pattern changes Thursday night. If you go back to Thursday night video, I showed how to do all those changes on that Thursday night video on YouTube, just 2 days ago, or 48 hours ago, whatever the number is. Okay? All right, anything else? Does that mean we're good? Does that mean we can go party? All right. So I want to say thank you guys. This weekend we're having sale on Gutermann thread and Serger thread, both, so that you can do your black and white and, you know, have it in stock. They're both on sale. Scissors are on sale. You get free thread snips. Can't remember what else. Oh, the ruler set. The ruler set is on sale. It's a tool sale. Did you see my guy? He was trying to hammer in a nail. He was using a wrench. It's a lot. I've done that before, but it's a lot easier if you have a hammer. So we're going to get you the right tools. So this is 3/21. Our pattern of the month is 1919. Not this Tuesday. This Tuesday our webcast is going to be on gathers and ruffles. But after that we'll do our webcast on 1919. So it gives you time to get your pattern, try to fit it, get it going, because we'll do all of that on that webcast afterwards. Other than that, you guys have a wonderful Easter for those who celebrate Easter, and we love you and happy sewing. All right, see you next time. Bye.